Hello and welcome to our presentation on global cinema. Today's topic will be covering the past, present and future of world cinema. Next slide please. So before we begin to understand the different movements that have influenced world cinema to date, first I think it's vital that we understand truly what world cinema means. There's some debate towards the actual meaning of the term, and this can be left open to interpretation. World cinema can often be misinterpreted to mean the total sum of all films made around the globe. However, another interpretation of the term world cinema refers to the films and the film industries that originate from both the English-speaking and the non-English-speaking world. Films that fall under world cinema are more artistically focused and less mainstream. So with that in mind, now that we sort of have a clearer idea of what the term world cinema is used to refer to, we have to start at the beginning, where cinema was born, to understand just truly how we have got this far. It all started with two French filmmakers who changed the world. Next slide, please. Many countries around the world contain influential filmmakers who have claims to what is the first motion picture camera. However, perhaps the most influential filmmakers of this time were the Lumiere brothers. This duo, deriving from France, invented what was known as the cinematograph, and this equipment was used to make 10 short films that would go on to be premiered to a live audience in Paris, France in 1895. Audiences at that time went to the cinema to witness spectacle on screen, something that they wouldn't normally see in their everyday lives. It's widely speculated, however, that during the screening of the film A Train Arriving at a Train Station, that the audience were so shocked by the train approaching the screen that audience members actually ducked out of the way and in some cases ran out of the theatre to avoid being confronted by the train coming towards them. By 1906, the number of people watching films grew rapidly as Nickelodeons started to appear. They were small theatres that charged just a nickel for admittance, and they became widely popular. By 1909, admittance to cinemas weekly reached an estimate of 45 million people. The Lumiere brothers once stated that the cinema was an invention without any future. Oh, how they were wrong. From then, cinema grew wider recognition as an influential medium, and its influence can be seen on a global scale. Next slide, please. Film was an integral part of the Russian Revolution, as it could be used to spread propaganda throughout the nation. The Soviet montage was the idea that film theory didn't necessarily have to align with theatrical frameworks, because the process of filmmaking itself provided an entirely different set of new tools. Lev Kuleshov came up with the montage theory, as you can see there in figure 1, claiming that one frame isn't enough to convey emotion. Kuleshov theorized that audiences can view 2 or 3 individual images and subconsciously give them context. His theory brings up questions as to how editing and composition influences the audience's interpretation of a sequence. His theory is also known as the Kuleshov effect. This inspired filmmakers such as Sergei Eisenstein with his film Battleship Potemkin, released in 1925, and how he utilizes Kuleshov's montage theory to explore how time and space can be presented in a film, as well as exploring how audiences responded to those same techniques. Next slide, please. We move on to the golden age of Hollywood. It was in 1927, through director Alan Crosland's The Jazz Singer, that the first talkie became widely available to American audiences. The film established the US's dominance within the film industry, as this use of sync sound further differentiated them from any other studio system at the time. While talkies were widely popular in America, these sync sound films posed a threat to their dominance internationally. Furthermore, the American studio system was comprised of the Big Five and the Little Three studios. The Big Five comprised of Warner Brothers, RKO, Fox, MGM, and Paramount, whereas the Little Three comprised of Columbia, Universal, and United Artists. As well as many other factors such as censorship and the Hays Code, the invention of the television was a big blow for cinema. Cinemas had to change in some way, and this took the form of adapting the widescreen format for projecting movies. However, it was studio head Samuel Goldwyn who strongly opposed these new changes within the industry, as he stated, A widescreen just makes a bad film twice as bad. As well as this, Hollywood began to come under fire during the early years of the Cold War. This was because the US government feared that the US studios were becoming stronger and they were running unopposed by anyone else. Therefore, in the case US versus Paramount, the Supreme Court decided that the film studios had violated antitrust laws, and this forced Hollywood to sell their theatre holdings, and they lost a grip on distribution ultimately. This, coupled with the havoc that World War II ensued, people began to flock to a new international cinema type. And I will hand you over to Marley to tell you more. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Ross. Now we will be looking at German cinema in the 1920s and 30s. So during the 1920s, German cinema flourished using expressionism to tell stories in an evocative way. Expressionism is known for its use of high angles to convey characters in distress, the use of deep shadows as a way of showing the dark subject matter, as well as the gloomy, dark scenery within the films, as well as chiaroscuro lighting as a way of emphasizing the deep shadows, which are utilized effectively during this period. The techniques that are used within the German Expressionist movement are reflective of the aftermath of World War I and how people were feeling during this time. Robert Wiene's The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, released in 1924, is seen as a representation of World War I, with the character of Caesar representing innocent soldiers driven to the murder by the authoritarian government, represented as Caligari. It is clear that this movement reflected the mood of the people at this time and was a response to the authoritarian leadership of Germany during this period. Next slide, please. Now, in the 1930s, however, the use of expressionism to tell stories was slowly fading away, as filmmakers wanted to explore new ways to make films. One main reason for the decline of expressionism was newer technology, and especially the use of sound. Sound gave German filmmakers more creative control and artistic freedom to explore different ways to go about making a film. Fritz Lang's M is a prime example of the type of exploration that filmmakers were seeking during this period. What is so intriguing about M is that sound is used as a storytelling device and can be seen when a murder is committed, signified through a leitmotif, proving how essential this exploration of sound is to the film. As newer technologies were being explored in Germany, World War II wreaked havoc and caused damage to this exploration. And this isn't the only country that we see the effects of war influencing the filmmaking style. Next slide, please. Now, after the devastation caused by World War II, new movements were born that wanted to showcase people of a lower echelon, the kind of people most affected by war. Movements such as Italian neorealism and the French New Wave were a direct contrast to the Hollywood studio system and were forced through the impact of war to shoot low-budget films as studios were destroyed. Shooting on location was a conscious choice by these filmmakers to tell their stories and show the post-World War II depression of both Italy and France. A prime example of a film from this movement is Bicycle Thieves, and this shows what kinds of stories these filmmakers could tell within a minimal budget. I mentioned earlier another movement which had a profound impact on global cinema, and this is the French New Wave. Next slide, please. Now, in 1948, Alexandre Astruc published The Birth of a New Avant-Garde, Le Camera Stylo for L'Écran Français, or the French screen. In the article, he outlines the power of cinema as an artistic tool, and that it could rival literature and artwork. He also disapproved of the path cinema was heading with the new commercialization of cinema. These thoughts and ideas were shared by Jean-Luc Godard, François Truffaut, Jacques Rivette, Eric Rohmer, and Claude Chabrol. They collectively explored Astruc's views and later conceptualized the auteur theory. Now, this theory argues that a film is a reflection of the director's artistic vision, similar to how we see a poet, author, or artist. The director's vision is key to the film's artistic value. So, for instance, they saw Orson Welles and Hitchcock as auteurs in their work. Somewhere in the late 1950s, the then writers of the Cahiers du Cinéma set out to make their own films and prove this theory, and this was the birth of the French New Wave. In 1959, Truffaut released The 400 Blows. Godard's Breathless came out the following year, and both films were met with international success and praised for their film techniques. Breathless, in particular, incorporated handheld camera work as well as the use of jump cuts, which were unheard of at the time. It was speculated that the jump cuts was either Goddard experimenting other ways to present the passing of time, or he had simply forgot to shoot the necessary material. While these movements were popular, another form of cinema that deserves a spotlight for how successful it became is Turkish cinema. I will now hand it back over to Ross to tell us more. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Marley. So now we're going to talk a bit about Turkish cinema. So from roughly the 1950s to the 1970s, Turkey had its own form of the golden age of cinema that was known as the Yeşilçam era. This was named after Yeşilçam Street, where many of the big actors, directors and studios were based in Turkey. This was their form of Hollywood. During the 1960s, Turkish cinema had reached uncharted heights as it became the 5th biggest film producer in the world. The film showcased the immense talent and storytelling capabilities of Turkish filmmakers and actors to a global audience was Dry Summer, released in 1963 and directed by Metin Erksan. The film faced a lot of backlash upon its release. The Ministry of Interior's Film Censorship Board banned the film as they feared that it would brand Turkish society in a negative way. However, more on that in later slides. However, in the years following Dry Summer, political instability, a rapidly declining economy, and rising costs of production were all contributing factors to the decline of Turkish cinema in the post-Yeşilçam era. Next slide, please. So now for the plot of Dry Summer. So while working on the dam, complications with other farmers, such as the other farmers killing the main character's dog or blowing up the dam, this leads our main character Osman to shoot them. Osman ends up murdering another farmer and convinces Hassan, his brother, to take the blame. He tells him he is younger and he'll get a lighter sentence. Hassan is then sentenced to 8 years as he was provoked to murder the farmer. Osman uses Hassan's absence in order to advance on Bahar, his brother's wife. He destroys letters sent from Hassan, and when a prisoner called Hassan is killed, Bahar is distraught. After finding out this news, Bahar flies home, only to later hear that Osman has told her that she owns half of everything as Hassan's widow. However, Hassan is in fact not dead, and once he is pardoned, he learns what Osman has done. Osman shoots at Bahar, who runs at him with an axe and wounds her. Osman then shoots repeatedly at Hassan, but misses, and Hassan then manages to throw his brother in the dam, and he drowns. I will then now move on to the context of Dry Summer, and I will hand you over to Caitlin to tell you more. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Ross. I'm now going to be talking about the context of Dry Summer. Dry Summer is a black and white Turkish film released in 1964. The film was co-written and directed by Metin Erksan. It helped to introduce Turkish cinema to a global audience, and it achieved international acclaim. The film stars people such as Earl Taz, Erkin Yazgan and more. Dry Summers earned awards such as the Golden Bear at the 14th Berlin International Film Festival and the Benil Award at the 25th Venice Film Festival. I'm now going to go on to a deeper scene analysis of Dry Summer. Next slide, please. In this scene, we first see an extreme long shot of what appears to be a woman flashing a torch. The camera then cuts to a medium shot where we see the woman's face and that she is in fact holding a torch. The camera then cuts back to the two boys talking, and we can see the torchlight on Hassan's face. Through his body language and facial expressions, we can tell that this woman is a possible love interest for him. We then see a medium close-up of her putting perfume on. This helps to put the idea that she is a possible love interest across to the audience. She wants to smell nice for him. We then see what appears to be a chase scene of him following her through a hard-to-see area and her running away giggling. It would almost remind you of the silly childhood game Kiss Chase. We then see a shot of when they finally meet and embrace each other. This first scene establishes the romantic love interest between Hassan and Bahar. And this makes Osman's actions later in the film all the more tragic. Now I'll move on to scene 2. Next slide, please. In this scene, we see Hassan and Bahar talking by the dam. Then we see a long shot of Hassan opening the barricade and letting the water flow freely to the other farmers. There's then a medium close-up of Osman. This is a good shot as we can see the action in which he is climbing up the ladder. However, we can also see his worried facial expression. Osman then proceeds to fix the barricade, and there's a shot of Hassan and Bahar walking away. This scene establishes Osman's conflict not only between the other farmers, but between his brother, and foreshadows the ending of the film. I will now move on to scene 3. Next slide, please. In this scene, we first see a close-up of a man with a gun. This could leave the audience questioning who or what is he going to shoot. We then see the over-the-shoulder shot of a dog. The man shoots the dog, and the camera cuts to a shot of Osman looking for his dog. We can see the anger in his face as he finds his dead dog lying there. This would be a key scene in the film as it shows the other farmers and the lengths they will go to in order for Osman to open the dam. Later that night, two of the farmers also blow up the dam. We see a silhouette of Osman firing a gun towards the direction the other farmers went, and he ends up killing one. This incident eventually leads to the downfall of Hassan and emphasises the division between himself and Osman. Many of the scenes in Dry Summer can be seen as controversial. I'm now going to be passing over to Matt. Next slide, please.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. I will now take over and tell you a little bit how Dry Summer did not get the appreciation from its home country as it should have. The Turkish government thought that the union with Bahar and her dead husband's brother would bring into question the acceptable morality of Turkish culture, and that the film, and therefore Turkey itself, would be looked down on by global audiences. There are two instances of animal cruelty in this film. When Osman slaughters a chicken and when one of the other farmers kills Osman's dog. The Turkish government believed that showing animal cruelty in a film would cast a bad light on the culture of Turkey and that it likely wouldn't get past the American censors. Next slide, please. Now, I'm going to tell you about the recent rise of global cinema in the Western world after the 1970s, including restoration projects and the reason why foreign film is surging in popularity. What I'm about to tell you will show how foreign film broke out of the title of difficult to watch films and how this led to this year's Oscars and how the film won 4 awards, including Best Picture. Next slide, please. Western audiences, particularly American and British audiences, claimed to find films that were in a language other than English to be a chore to watch if they had to read subtitles, and only saw if a Western studio had dubbed the film. This saw a rise in Eastern animation as Western studios were more likely to create English dubs for them. For example, the rise of Studio Ghibli. Studio Ghibli and their ties with the Walt Disney Company led to their films gaining a large Western audience and allowed work by Asian filmmakers and animators to become more recognized. However, this benefit also came with a downfall for other creators as Studio Ghibli films were dubbed into English, which further alienated other foreign films that did not have high quality dubbing or any dubbing at all. Next slide, please. The Film Foundation was founded in 1990 by Martin Scorsese and other leading filmmakers of the period. This was created to spread awareness of film restoration campaigns and projects, as well as creating programs that educate others on film. The World Cinema Project was established in 2007 by Martin Scorsese after seeing the work that he had done with the Film Foundation. This was created for establishing the restoration of foreign film titles so that they could be preserved and not lost to time. This can also be seen in the company known as the Criterion Collection, who focuses on licensing important classics and contemporary films and selling them to film aficionados. Criterion has also helped to standardize film restoration, bonus features, and commentary tracks. Next slide, please. And finally, we're going to talk about the Oscars this year. Parasite is one of the first films to truly break through the language barrier and widely reach Western audiences, as proven by their Western box office record. The Oscars this year was praised for its inclusivity, as well as did Parasite not only win Best Picture, however the award that was originally titled Best Foreign Language Award was changed to Best International Film Award. This showed that the Oscar award show was becoming much more inclusive of non-English films, and that foreign films had finally cemented themselves as mainstream cinema in the Western Hemisphere. This may have led the cinemas opening in July to play films such as The Vigil, which was nearly 50% in Yiddish and required subtitles. Now, to finish off our presentation, we will play one last slide, and thank you so much for watching.
Wow, amazing. Unbelievable. Yeah, I'm foreign language filmmaker, so I have a translator here. Please understand. No. 그 자막, 서브타이틀의 장벽도 아니죠. 한 1인치 정도 되는 그 장벽을 뛰어넘으면 여러분들이 훨씬 더 많은 영화를 즐길 수 있습니다.
Once you overcome the 1-inch tall barrier of subtitles, you will be introduced to so many more amazing films.